Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. It's time for Week 11 preview of the 2024 NFL season. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and with me today, I've got a returning guest, a fan favourite. Back with us today is Freddy Harper-Davis. Freddie, how are you, mate? How are things?
Yeah, hi all. Yeah, I'm really good. Obviously the Steelers are 7-2, so I'm sat here not complaining. I mean, it's not going quite so well for Miami, but that's all good. And this week's games, I mean, I've lucked out, haven't I? Because I think we've probably got the best week of the season so far coming upon us. So yeah, very much looking forward to this week.
Yeah, we got some crackers to look forward to coming up. I mean, yeah, not being quite the season I hope, but we'll go on to there on. But you think that there's still a chance, to quote Jim Carrey, you've got to win pretty much most of your games and hope that everyone's will beat each other. But yeah, we're only 2 games away from the playoff positions, and we'll go on to there on as well. We got our most favourable fixture of the season so far on Sunday. So yeah, it's I think there's a chance. We just need things to go away, but you never know. But yeah, let's get into it. First of all, on Thursday night, which is going to be a game which is 1:15 a.m. for those listening in the UK, as the Washington Commanders take on the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm going to go for the road win. I'm going to go for the Washington Commanders to be... Actually, before we do any of that, apologies, I'm giving a little bit of spoiler there. Before we do any of that, we must go through last week's results. So we had Shea Brennan on last week from the Irish NFL show. He got 10, I got 9. We all had the exact same predictions, apart from the one game, which was me going for the Giants and Shane going for the Panthers. And I did forget to mention last week our scores when I had Oliver Kent on the show. I actually had 13 correct scores, whereas Ollie had 11. So as it stands at the moment, I still lead the way with 14 correct scores. But also, my lowest score as well is also me, which comes earlier on in the season. I believe that was week 3. So I both lead the leaderboard and also I'm the lowest on the leaderboard. But going back to my point about the Commanders-Eagles, I think the Commanders win. Even though they gave Dallas a good hiding, I think who hasn't this season? I mean, they've been pretty terrible, Dallas Cowboys, this season. So I'm not putting too much stock in that. And I just have this feeling that I can just picture right now in my head Jane Daniels after the game speak on Amazon Prime after they win the game. There's no logic to it because on paper, Eagles have got probably a slightly better roster pound for pound, but I just think they'll be hungry to avenge their defeat last weekend. The Eagles probably took the foot off the gas against the Cowboys when they led by so much at halftime. So, yeah, I can see the Commanders being more up for the win on the road, and they get the win. But how about you, Freddie? Who wins this game for you?
Eagles for me, and I don't generally think it's going to be that close either. If it's a fairly evenly looking match on a Thursday night, I always go with the home team every time. And I watched Commanders last week because they were playing the Steelers, and that they threw away so many chances to win that game, and the Steelers did as well. But they've got a few injuries. Jaden Daniels had his worst game of the season. They had the fewest yards. I know the Steelers defense is obviously one of the better ones in the league, but they weren't at their best. And I think against the good teams, I've not yet seen them rise to the challenge. So I think the Eagles will win this one on Thursday night. But as you say, the Eagles are I'm yet to be completely convinced by them either. But I think for now I'm going with the home team on the Thursday night, and I'm backing the Eagles.
You make a good point there, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles win this game. It probably was, I think, the hardest one to call for me. One more I've got in there, which probably I found hard. I'm still in between now, but yeah, I think, yeah, as you said, exactly, short week at home. That's why I went for the Bengals. The Ravens to beat the Bengals last Thursday in last week's show with Shane. I'm just going for a hunch. Moving on to the 6 p.m. slate on Sunday. The first game is in Soldier Field as the Chicago Bears take on the Green Bay Packers. I think if you'd asked me this question when I watched the Bears play in London, I would be more up for a debate as to who wins this game. But since that point, they've been pretty terrible. They've lost 3 games in a row. They've just fired offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. This could have an impact. We saw the Saints beat the Falcons last week with a new coaching change, albeit head coach, not coordinator. But I'm still backing the Packers to win. They had a bye week last week, so they've had a week extra to rest. We don't know what the Bears are going to be like with a new coordinator, whoever that is, taking over the reins on Sunday. And I just think there's been a long history of Rodgers owning the Bears, and I think Jordan Love so far has got a great record against the Bears for the Packers. And I just think, they got a longer time to rest. They got a better team anyway, and the Bears are a bit of a downturn in form at the moment. So I'm going to give the Packers the win over the Bears. Freddie, who wins this game for you?
Well, if you look at the Bears' remaining schedule, they've got the whole of the NFC North, and then they've also got the 49ers and the Seahawks. I mean, it's a brutal back end of the season, and they're on a really bad run of form. But this is going to be my shock of the week this week, I think, because you've said yourself, a new offensive coordinator, often you see a different team and you've got players now with a point to prove. Right, we've got to prove that it wasn't us, it was the offensive coordinator. We've got to go out and prove that we're there, and what better to do it against your arch rival, the Packers. I really like Green Bay. I think they're going to go deep in this season. I think they're better than the Vikings. They're not as good as Detroit, but I think they're the second best team in the division. But I think it's just going to be one of those days where the Bears have to win it even more than the Packers do, and I just think it's going to be a narrow Bears win.
Do you know what I will say? This is probably my favourite NFL game of the season. I mean, I mentioned it many times, my love for Chicago and Soldier Field, the history there too. I think this is the best rivalry in the NFL, the history behind it. And I think maybe you could argue maybe at Lambeau is better than Soldier Field in terms of the spectacle, but there's something about Packers going to Bears or Soldier Field for me. It's just it feels old school. It's the history behind it, and I don't know whether that will change when you move to a new stadium, but I love Bears Packers, and if it wasn't for another game taking place at 6 p.m, I'd probably be watching this game in full. But my loyalty's live somewhere else at 6 p.m. But I literally forgot what I was going to say now. But we will.
It's not even the best 6 p.m. rivalry going on. That's all I will say.
That is a very good point. We'll get more on that later on. We've both got big loyalties involved in this game, and with the Packers, I think I love what you're saying, because I had the Packers winning the NFC in our season predictions, and I still think even though the Lions are the best team in the NFC, arguably at the moment, and I think the Lions certainly, with McCaffrey back now, could still run deep. But I just think I can just picture, even with the Packers maybe finishing second in the division as one of the wildcard teams, I can still picture them beating the Lions in the playoffs. Even though the Lions taught them a new one in the regular season. We saw that with the Buccaneers being taught one by the Saints. And they won in the playoff game with Tom Brady against Drew Brees, which ended Drew Brees' career. So, I still think the Packers, to me, are a very good team. And I still have this hunch that I can just see them in the playoffs, whether it's divisional round, conference championship, wild card, playing against the Lions. I have this feeling I'm going to see them winning it in Detroit and shocking the world. But speaking of Detroit, our next game is in Detroit as the Lions take on the Jags. Freddie, I'll give you the reins this time. First of all, who wins out of the Jags and the Lions?
Lions.
Yeah, that's literally all you got to say. I'm the same as you. The Jags are terrible, and the Lions are arguably right now the best team in the NFL. So not really much to say on this one. I think it's pretty easy to predict.
Yep.
Speaking of which, actually, recent times, I didn't think I'd be saying this 4 weeks ago. Easy win for the Dolphins. They host the Raiders. I think this is by far our easiest game on paper. Looking back at now how the season's gone, you can maybe argue Jacksonville was, but we didn't know that in week one. The Raiders are bad, and I'm fully aware I'm saying this with them as playing them, and that could come back to bite me. And my brother is a Raiders fan, so he'll be, I'm sure, give me some texts on the Sunday in the game. But I just don't see any way, even with a shorter week than the Raiders, that we lose this game. I was really impressed with Monday Night Football. I loved the celebration with Odell Beckham and Tyreek Hill, but I think the defense especially was really good. Tua was questionable at times, some questionable throws, and there was also the incident involving his head. But there was some great defensive play. Javon Holland had a great play. Trot Robinson is getting more and more involved and having more and more highlight plays. Maybe not so much highlight plays, more sort of pressures he's putting on quarterbacks. Other players are sort of getting the sacks in the stats. But this Dolphins defense has been really impressive at times. It's been a shame that the times where our offense plays well, our defense doesn't, and vice versa. It's been the case for like 3 or 4 years now. But I think this game with the poor Raiders team, I think it won't be an easy. I think it will be an easy sense of prediction to win this game, but I don't think it'll be an easy game. I think the Raiders will give us a good game, and they will make it tough. I think, especially through their run game. But I just think overall, I think our defense showed enough against the Rams, against a good quarterback in Stafford and weapons like Puka Nacua and Kieran Williams and Cup. And I just think against a team that there's only really one great player I can think of on offense, receiver-wise, and that's Kirby Myers. I think this will be an easy win for the Dolphins. Freddie, for you, Raiders or Dolphins?
There's a few teams in this league that, this season, I think more than ever, there's teams in this league which I haven't a clue what sort of direction they're going in. Bad teams with very little clue. The Giants are one that springs to mind. The Browns are another. The Jags are another one that we've just talked about. But none of them seem to me more sort of, I don't know where this team's going than the Raiders. They've changed coaches, they've changed quarterbacks, they've changed this, they've changed that. They've even changed owners. They've got Tom Brady on board. What's going to happen next? I have no idea. The team's a mess. The only really positive spark is Max Crosby. I can't believe he wants to stay there and doesn't want to get out of Vegas, but fair play to him for sticking there. But this is a bad team. We played there earlier in the season, and honestly, we could have put 50 points on them if we wanted to. It was just, they're just a really, really bad team. The Dolphins have to win to keep themselves going. They're on, they're 3-6, aren't they? If I could correct me if I'm wrong, but really, you're going to need to win. You're going to need to win 9. I think in the AFC, you're going to need to win 9 games at a bare minimum, but you might need 10. But I think this year you'll need 9. So you can only afford to lose 2 more, and you can't afford to lose this one. So, I think the Finns will win this one by a couple of scores.
Yeah, you mentioned it then. We're currently the 10th seed in the AFC, 3-6. They're only 2 wins behind the Broncos, and on the one hand, I want to see the Chiefs lose, end the last team being unbeaten to preserve the 1972 Dolphins. But at the same time, it might have actually helped our playoff case because they're only 2 wins behind the Broncos. And looking at the Broncos game, of course, they've got a tough proposition against the Falcons. They're a very inconsistent team, but that's a tough one. Bengals are playing the Chargers. Both teams are in that mix. The Chargers are currently 6-3. The Bengals are currently got 4 wins. They're 4-6. And you look at the rest of the thing. The Colts are 4-6. We'll get onto them in a bit, but they've been very hit and miss. And even looking further on than that, I think in terms of the 5 are set, the 4 division winners, and I think the Ravens are in regardless. And then so it's not the end of the world. We've got the Texans, Niners, and there was a 13 that was tough, but we've also got the Jets twice. That's 2 winnable games. We got the Raiders this Sunday. We got the Patriots, very winnable game. We've also got the Browns. I think right now that was more winnable than it was maybe before the season started. So I think you look at there, that's Jets twice, Raiders, Patriots, Browns. There's 5 wins there. That's 8 wins. And then there was Packers on Thanksgiving. That's going to be tough. But I think the Texans one, they've showed inconsistencies, and obviously they've lost a receiver like Diggs. They haven't been quite as good the last 2 weeks, albeit by the time we play them, it might be a different story. They might have had their game, but I think that's the key one for me. I think I expect we lose against the Niners and the Packers, but I expect to win against the Raiders, Patriots, at least one of the 2 Jets games. And I think then you look at the Texans one, which I want to say is week 16. It's definitely late on in the season, I believe. I think if we can win that one, that's a big statement to the league, first of all. And I think if we can get a run going, which is probably the opposite of where our season's been the last couple of years. We start really well, end poorly. We could flip the table and do it that way. And maybe that could be a good thing. And also, there depends on what the other teams do. But I think the Colts, Bengals, and Broncos, particularly Colts and Bengals, showing some inconsistencies. I don't think it's completely out of the realm. I think it's a tough ask, and I think that really we should be a lot better with I think particularly the Colts loss. I think was a big one. That game we should have won. Same with the I think sadly the one I was at, the Cardinals game. But I think it's doable. But I think we have to really get a run going now. But I think I was pleased to see us, albeit it was in warm weather, but we still managed to in prime time beat a good team and do it in front of everyone. So I think I think there's definitely reason to be positive, but we can't afford any other losses to teams we shouldn't lose to. Fingers crossed, but it's a tough ask. The team we beat, the Rams, they're next as they travel to New England to take on the Patriots. Freddie, Rams or Pats?
Well, a week ago, I'd have said, well, easy Rams win. They're on good form. They're doing quite well. And then the Patriots go into Chicago and absolutely batter the Bears. I mean, that wasn't remotely close. And then the Rams, I thought the Dolphins would go into LA and beat them because they had to. But I thought the Dolphins were quite comfortably the better team. The Rams are really hit and miss. That NFC West in general has been pretty hit and miss across the divisions. I really like the Cardinals. The other three I'm not so keen on. But I mean the Patriots are playing pretty well. They're in good form. The Rams have got to go cross country to a cold weather place. I might go for another upset here. I think I might go with the Patriots.
Nice. I say nice. I like the boldness. Maybe not who wins the game, but I'm going to go for the Rams. I think the Patriots for me are a team that I think certainly, look at Upset Watch. They've had a lot of close games. They've had a lot of games where they've put up a fight, and I think they've been better than we maybe thought they would start the season. But I still back the Rams to win. I think that there were a few mistakes they made. There was a couple of fumbles and all that. I think that hadn't happened. They may have won that game against us. So I don't want to put the panic on yet because they've gone from 1-4 at one point to now 4-5. So they've managed to cover themselves, and they're very much in the division hunt. And the Patriots, of course, aren't in that conversation. So I think the Rams have more to play for, and I back them to come back from that loss, especially with someone like Revenge, a head coach, and get the win on this one. Next up is arguably the worst game of the week on paper as the New Orleans Saints host the Cleveland Browns. Now, this one is quite a hard one to predict. I'm not going to lie. Browns or Saints. I think the Saints may have got the win against the Falcons, and there's a new, obviously, head coach or interim head coach there. But I don't think it lasts. I think the Browns win this game. I think they're going to be a team with Winston, as he proved his entire career, up and down. One week they win, one week they don't. And I think the same with the Saints right now. They had a 6-game losing streak, and then they won their last game. I don't see them winning again in this game. I just think the Browns ultimately, have a better team. I think that's literally as much as it comes down to. I think Winston will be determined to, win at his old team, a ground he's comfortable at, in New Orleans. And I'm not trusting enough from the Saints to really back them to win any game this year. So give me the Browns over the Saints. Freddie, who are you backing?
I don't really rate either team, but I'm just going to go for my classic anti-AFC North stance and just go with the Saints. But I mean, I'm not keen on either team. I genuinely think the Browns will beat us next Thursday night because it's just one of those weird voodoo things that seems to happen. We seem to play the Browns away on Thursday every year, and they always seem to beat us. So I'm going to go with the Saints to win this week, and then the Browns to have a shock win against the Steelers next Thursday.
Interesting. Well, our next game is even more interesting with news that came out today. It's the Colts traveling to the Jets at MetLife Stadium. Anthony Richardson will be starting for the Colts, which this whole thing is really, really irking me because how are you meant to develop a quarterback when one week he's in, 1 week he's not? And I get if he's not playing well and they're sort of in playoff contention, so you got to try and do what's best for the team. But I don't know how this is benefiting his progression. Obviously, last year wasn't the Colts' fault. It was down to an injury, missed all but the first 4 or 5 weeks. But this season, I think a friend of the show, George on Sports, Georgia Gators, talked about it as well. Like, just stick with it. Just if you're going to win some games, you're going to lose some games. But I think for his development, you can't just keep benching him and just alternate between 1 week between him and the guy who was on the sofa this time last year. So for me, the Colts, I still back them to win this game. I think the Jets are just in a bit of disarray right now. But I don't know what this does for Richardson's confidence. I think we saw Bryce Young. He's been benched and come back and played well the last 2 games. So maybe that'll have the same effect in Indy with Richardson. But it's a very dangerous game they're playing. And I think at some point you've got to just stick with him. So maybe this is a time where he'll start to get better against a team that is struggling. But yeah, I'm not being too convinced with what the Colts are doing, both coaching-wise, but also the front office.
Yeah, I mean, Jets are in last chance saloon here. They're 3-7. They really cannot afford to lose another game for the minute. We'll see how the division play out, but they really, really have to win this weekend. And the Colts are much the same. As we've said about the AFC, we've got 5 teams who you think will be in the playoffs in the Texans, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Steelers. Unless there's a big collapse from one of them, you'd expect all 5 of those to be playoff teams. And then you've got the Chargers, who I think are a playoff team. They're 6-3, and they're playing some really good football with a coach and quarterback combination that I really like. So you're only left with one place, and you've got the Broncos who are playing really nice all-round football. The Bengals, who've got a fantastic offense, albeit with a terrible defense. The Dolphins are starting to find some form. So you've got the Jets, you've got the Colts on the outside looking in as well. I mean, for both these teams, they have to get this win. I think the Jets are the same as you. I actually, to start the season, I thought they were a bottom 5 team. I haven't rated them at all. In fact, I even think I came on the preview show when we were talking about this at the start of the season and said, I don't rate this Jets team. And I'm sticking with it. I think the Colts win. Do I think Anthony Richardson's the answer? No, I don't. I really don't. He looks exactly the same player as he looked in college. He can make the 1% throws, but he can't make the 100% throws. So, yeah, I'm not convinced, but I think the Colts roster's got just about enough to see off the Jets, and Aaron Rodgers will have to blame something else next week.
Now, Freddie, I don't know whether you heard our season predictions episode. Can you guess who my MVP prediction was prior to the season starting?
Well, I think I was on your season predictions episode because it was me, you, and Freddie. But
no, the one for the general sort of
the general one.
Predictions for like the divisions and.
Oh, you probably would have said Aaron Rodgers.
Anthony Richardson, I went for, which is looking right now like one of the worst takes in history.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but I know you're obviously a Florida college football fan, so you've seen plenty of Anthony Richardson. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't progressed at all. And I don't know whether that's him or the coaches. I think it's very much a mixture of both. But yeah, it's just not working in Indy whatsoever.
No, exactly. And Jordan was right. Yeah, I wanted to go Jordan Love originally, but then I had Packers reaching the Super Bowl, and I had the whole thing about only one quarterback since Kurt Warner in '99 has won an MVP and a Super Bowl in the same year. Before realizing that actually, wait a sec, I had him to lose to the Ravens, not to win it. So I could have gone for Love to win MVP and lose the Super Bowl, and I wouldn't have gone against that stat that's going around. So really, I messed it up. I should have gone Jordan Love, but my brain let me down on that one. Now, here we are. I think, personally, the second best game of the weekend to look forward to. And Freddie, probably a bit of nerves, a bit of tension, a bit of excitement, apprehension ahead of this one as the Baltimore Ravens travel to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a mammoth clash, which has, 2 massive AFC powerhouses right now. I mean, you got the Ravens on 7-3, Steelers 7-2, both battling for that AFC North crown. Most likely the other team, 5th or 6th seed in the AFC. What a game it's going to be. I mean, I think I'll let you go first, Freddie. You're the one who watches this team week in, week out. What a game to look forward to, and how are you feeling about it?
Oh, it's going to be a fantastic game. I also think it's going to be the second best game this weekend, but my number one is probably not the one that you're thinking it's going to be.
Okay.
But more on that later. But this game's going to be brilliant. I mean, Steelers-Ravens games are always close, exciting games, no matter what the teams look like. And I mean, the Steelers the last 3 or 4 years have had terrible offense, and they're 7-1 against the Ravens in the last 4 years. I mean, admittedly, the Ravens haven't been fully healthy, but this time around, Lamar's healthy, Derrick Henry's healthy. The Ravens are coming in with all their weapons. This is going to be a really, really good game. And the Steelers' offense has got better and better and better. It was pretty good with Justin Fields. It was improved to what it was from last year. I mean, that's not difficult, but it had improved. But with Russell Wilson, it's just elevated another level. And we saw that in Washington on Sunday. It's the first time in 3 years that we'd thrown 3 touchdowns in a game. That's how bad our offense has been over the last few years. And the defense is playing really good football. I think that'll be the difference maker. I think our defense is better than the Ravens' defense. I think their offense is better than our offense, but I think our defense is better than the Ravens' defense by more than the offense is. So, and given that we have a very good record against Lamar Jackson, I'm going to take the Steelers at home, but it's going to be another really tight game. It'd probably come down to the last play and be something like a 21-17 or something. But yeah, really, really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. I think if you love running backs, and you've got a whole array of people here. You've got Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. You've also got Najee Harris. But I think if you are a fan of running backs, you're going to be disappointed in this game because you've got the two of the top 4 run defenses in the league. Ravens number 1, Steelers number 4. So I think we're going to see maybe not the best games from the likes of Henry and Najee Harris, but I think when it comes to yards allowed per game, when it comes to the passing game, there's a lot more struggles for both teams. I mean, Ravens are actually last in the league when it comes to yards allowed per game passing. Steelers about middle of the road. So I think if you could say Flowers, George Pickens, Mike Williams, Mark Andrews might get involved as well. I think we're going to see who is the best quarterback in the game. And I think Lamar Jackson will, I'm not going to say school Russell Wilson, but I think Lamar Jackson will have another great game in front of everyone. And I think that Lamar Jackson, for me, I've said it before, I think it's his year. I've had the Ravens winning the Super Bowl since the start of the season, maybe apart from those first 2 weeks. I don't think really been anyone close to for me. I think the Chiefs obviously are probably the favourite for everyone, but I just think it is Lamar's year. And I think I've had him every week winning. I think I had him losing week 3 to Dallas, but apart from that, I think I've gone from every week to win a game. And I just think that defensive wise, yeah, I think that you'll see probably the likes of, I think George Pickens especially have a great game, but I just think that this is another game where Lamar Jackson's going to give the Steelers pass defense some problems. But again, I'm like Commanders Eagles. I wouldn't be shocked if I'm wrong on this one. But I just think, again, I think it's Lamar's year. I think they are on the road, but I think even so, I just think that I'm saying it again here, but it is Lamar's year. And I think ultimately it'll come down to the quarterbacks. And I think ultimately Russell Wilson will struggle more than Lamar Jackson will. And I think that will give the Ravens the win.
He's got to turn up against the Steelers at some point. So, yeah, even in his MVP years, he's never, ever been able to perform well in Pittsburgh. So he's got to do it at some point. So why not this season?
It's a good point. I think if he can beat the Steelers, which he hasn't done, as you're saying, which I've actually forgotten about, maybe that'll be the year where he actually goes out and does reach a Super Bowl and maybe win it. So, yeah. But I think like the defense has been pretty bad. I mean, certainly in the passing game for the Ravens, but I just don't know whether Russell Wilson, I don't think he's been the reason why you're 7-2. I don't believe that for a second. I think he's been a calm figure, and I think he's been serviceable, and I think he's been, there's probably more than serviceable. I think he's been good, but I don't think he's been the reason why you won games. Personally, maybe you think differently to me, but I don't think I've seen enough from the outside point of view to think that he is a guy that's winning you games. Maybe it's more deep. It probably is more the defense. But would you say that, Freddie, or what's your thoughts on Russell Wilson? Because Fields came in, wasn't that great, I didn't think, but did all right. And then Wilson's come in, they've done better, if not, same, if not better. So yeah, what's your take been on Russell Wilson's time in Pittsburgh?
Well, we were 4-2 under Fields. We had 2 pretty bad losses against the Colts and the Cowboys. But Fields was okay. I mean, as I've said, our offense in previous years has been terrible. So anything that even looked remotely like an NFL offense, people are going to be very excited about. And Fields' legs got us out of all sorts of issues with an O-line that was learning how to sort of function and get going. But now the O-line's sort of in place. We've got players like Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, two rookies who've had really, really good starts. Obviously, Fatanu's out for the year, which is a real shame because he started really brightly as well. But we've got a young offensive line that needed time to put itself together. And then with a slightly less mobile quarterback, but with a more accurate one who can throw, beautiful deep balls in Russell Wilson, which has then enabled George Pickens to thrive in the last few weeks. We've got Mike Williams in, who's another deep ball specialist. Russell Wilson really can elevate this offense and then try and get the run game going. My point again about Lamar struggling against the Steelers have often contained Lamar and really forced him to make throws he shouldn't be making. But one thing that I think we might do is try and contain Lamar so much that it frees up Derrick Henry to have a bit of a field day. So I wouldn't be surprised. I know you said about our run defense being the 4th in the league, but I would not be surprised if Lamar struggles, but Henry has a big game and goes for way over 100 yards.
Interesting. I mean, as a big Henry fan, I would be all in favour of seeing him demolish that Steelers defense. Our final 6 p.m. game is in Tennessee as the Vikings take on the Titans. Now, I'm currently in the middle of writing an article about the Vikings, how the bye week has sort of come at the wrong time for them. They were 5-0, but they were starting to struggle in that London game. But I think they've been pretty bad, particularly at quarterback since that. And I think they're lucky they're playing the Titans. So I think if they played anyone else last week, they probably would have lost that game against the Jags. I think Donald, has been really bad in recent weeks. He's been back to the old Donald we saw maybe with the Jets and Panthers. I think even with that said, I think this Vikings defense and even the offense with Donald struggling has gone up to beat the Titans. I think the Titans have been probably the worst team of football this year. They really have been. It's them or the Giants for me have been the worst 2 teams. And yeah, I think the Vikings will win this game. I think it'll be one of those ones where, I can see likes of maybe Westbrook Akine putting up a show, or maybe Will Levis having a day, but I don't know whether there'll be enough. And I think the Vikings will just about squeeze past the Titans.
Yeah, I agree. This one on paper should be an easy Vikings win, but I saw bits of their game against Jacksonville, and it was awful to watch. I think it could be similar this week. Brian Flores obviously is a guy who you and I know both very, very well. He was head coach in Miami, and then obviously was had a big say in our defense a couple of years ago. And brilliant defensive mind, probably the best defensive coordinator in football, and that defense is just suffocating. I think we all knew that the Sam Darnold MVP era was probably going to fade away at some point. As fun as it's been to watch, but it's soon to be the JJ McCarthy era next year. I think there's no doubts about that now. But yeah, the Vikings have just got too much for the Titans. I've not been impressed with them at all, whether it's been Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, another guy obviously I know very well. But yeah, the Titans are in rebuild mode. I think they're pretty comfortable with that. They're not one of those teams that I would brand in the Raiders category of I don't really know what direction they're going in. I think they're in rebuild mode. They know they are, and they're more than content with that. But for this game, I definitely think the Vikings will scrape through.
Now, you mentioned MVP Sam Darnold era. Now, we are in that time of year where we can start talking about MVP. Who would you pick for MVP if you were one of the people casting a vote?
I'd have to give it to Lamar Jackson again. I can't believe I'm saying that as a Steelers fan, but he's just levels above everyone else currently. So, yeah, I'll have to go Lamar.
I think for me, I said it last week actually that or I think even in a Week 10 review show that if Joe Burrow was on a 7-2 record, he'd be my MVP pick. He's been fantastic. He's had barely any picks, leads the league in passing yards. And I believe he's one of the top ones for touchdowns as well. He's been unbelievable. But the Bengals are 4-5, 4-6.
4-6, yeah.
4-6. Yeah, to me, you can't have MVP when the team's losing games. I do think if you take the word literally, I think Josh Allen for me is probably my pick because, he is no more crucial to their team than him. Because Lamar Jackson, you can also go to Henry, whereas it is all Josh Allen when it comes to Bills. And I think think the Bills easing towards the division. I think you can maybe look at that, but I think it probably is Lamar Jackson. But I think Josh Allen is definitely within the shout, and I think that the Bills ease to the division. Maybe the Ravens finish in the 5th seed or 6th seed or don't win a division. I think that could work in Josh Allen's favour, and I think that could help him win it. I think otherwise, I think probably it's between those two for me. Unless the Bengals go out and win all their games from now on and they win the division and they're the 2nd or 3rd seed in the AFC, go then for me. But otherwise, if they keep losing games or don't make the playoffs, I think he'll never have no chance of winning it.
I wouldn't write off Kyler Murray in Arizona yet either, because they're a team that look quite hot and really could put on a run back end of the season and people take a notice. But actually, you've got a really good point about Joe Burrow. I mean, they're 4-6, but they're 4-6 because of their defense. It's not because of what Joe Burrow is doing on that offense. He's had 20 odd touchdowns and 4 interceptions. That's ridiculous this point of the season. And yeah, they're not really in contention, which is crazy. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know what more Burrow can do.
I mean, you can look at maybe someone like Jared Goff. I mean, if you take away last week, I mean, he's been pretty efficient with the ball. Not many incompletions at one point in the season. And I think, I know he would never win it, but Penei Sewell maybe he should be in with a shout because he's so crucial to that line team. But a lineman will never, ever win MVP, I don't think, in the way it is at the moment. Unless they catch about 10 touchdowns where they're eligible to receive the ball. There's no way. I don't think a lineman wins that award. Moving on to the later slate at 9:05. The first game is the Broncos hosting the Falcons. Freddie, Falcons or Broncos?
This is a hard one because the Broncos are playing better than I thought they would. The Falcons have just come off a very bad loss against the Saints. But the Falcons have been my Super Bowl pick since pre-season. I think the Lions are probably a better team at the minute, but I like the Falcons. I like Kirk Cousins. I like their offense. I think they just had an off week last week, so I think they're going to go into Denver and win.
Interesting. I've gone for the Broncos. I think that the defense has been really impressive for me, and I think Bo Nix has actually been really good. There was a pass he made in the last game, which was phenomenal to in the Chiefs game to, I believe it was a call at Sutton where he caught it toe tapped in the end zone. I think Bo Nix has been brilliant. I think he's been really a lot better than I ever envisaged. I think the Falcons, whilst I think they win the division, I think there's definitely some inconsistencies with this team. You can't quite work out what you're going to get each week from the Falcons. And I think on the road as well, I think I'll give them the loss and I'll give the Broncos the win. Second game is a old school rivalry. One that's really developed the last 10 years or so, especially with the Richard Sherman interview. Seattle Seahawks going to the Niners to take on the 49ers in San Francisco. I think if you asked me after week 3, I may have gone the Seahawks, but not now. Give me the Niners to win this game. I think with McCaffrey back now, I think they're going to start rolling now. I know they've lost Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Not Deebo Samuel. They've lost Brandon Ayuk. And I know that's a big loss, but I think they've still got enough there. And I think with McCaffrey back now, with the defense as good as it is, the head coach as good as he is, I think they're going to start rolling now. I think they're going to hit a really good time of the year, a really good stretch of form, and I think they're going to win this game. I think one of the more easier ones for me to predict of the entire weekend. Freddie, Niners or Seahawks?
I agree with pretty much everything you say, other than I don't really think that the Niners are anywhere near the levels that they were a year ago. I don't think they're NFC title contenders, really. I think they're 3rd or 4th best team. I think the Cardinals are a better team in the NFC West. But yeah, they're on an upward trend. They've got McCaffrey back. The Seahawks have started really strong, but they've fallen away very, very quickly. I think there's a bit of discontent in the camp. It's not really working in Seattle at the moment, and I'm with you. I can't see anything other than a Niners easy win.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks have been pretty bad. I think since our week 3, not pretty bad, but not great. Now 9:25, the last of our 9 p.m. 9:25 p.m. slate is the Buffalo Bills hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. For me, the game of the week. Buffalo Bills hosting the 9-0 Chiefs, but the Chiefs will be 9-1 after this week. I'm going for Buffalo Bills to end the Chiefs' unbeaten streak and get a win at Highmark Stadium. Many reasons for this. First of all, Josh Allen is the quarterback who's beaten Mahomes most times in his career. I think they're at home as well. The Bills seem to have done all right against the Chiefs when it comes to regular season football. And I just think that the Chiefs haven't been great when they've got we mentioned it before in week 10 review with Dom. They have the lowest point differential of any team who started the season 9-0. And I don't see it going 17-0. I think the streak will end at some point, and I think it will end here in Buffalo. Tyler Bass, 25-yard field goal to win the game, to avenge his demons from the playoff round. And I never thought I'd say this, but I'll be chanting on Sunday, let's go Buffalo, to keep the 1972 Dolphins team record intact. Freddie, thoughts on that? And
I don't think this is anywhere near the best game of the week. I really don't. I think this is a good game between two of the top teams in the AFC, but it's a game we'll see in the playoffs, I think, as we do every year. And it's not an AFC North rivalry game. It's not the game of the week that I think is the game of the week, which we are still yet to talk about. But I think it's just one of those sort of regular games between two top teams. When there are 3 or 4 really, really good games this week, and I haven't even mentioned the Eagles Commanders up there as good games. All 4 of those games in any other week would probably be the game of the week. But as it is, I'm talking about a 9-0 team and against another top team, and thinking, actually, for me, this isn't the best game. I think Ravens Steelers is better because of the old school rivalry, and we'll talk about the other one in a minute. But in terms of this game on itself, I'm going to argue with you again. This is being a nice week for arguing with you about different results. I think we've gone differently in about 4 or 5 of them so far, but I'm going with the Chiefs. I think that Mahomes has got Josh Allen's number. I think the Bills, whilst they're a good team, I still think that, as you've said yourself, they're really, really reliant on Josh Allen, and I think that Spagnuolo and that defense will have every answer in the book for how to deal with Josh Allen, try and make the Bills run the ball as much as possible, and really suffocate them. The question will be can Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense finally get something going? To be honest, I think they've almost been playing in second or third gear in the last few weeks, and now's the time for them to step up. And I think they will. I think the Chiefs will win this game. So, yeah.
Josh Allen is actually 3-1 against Mahomes in the regular season. I would still back the Chiefs to win them in the playoffs, but I think in the regular season, when the Chiefs probably don't care about the game as much because they know they're going to wrap up the division, they know that they like to get good when it gets to like week 14. So I think the Bills, I think Josh Allen seems to have Mahomes' number in the regular season. He's only lost once to him in non-playoff games. So I think for me, I think the Bills win this, and I think that the Chiefs seem to find ways to win. And I think if they were to do the 3-peat unbeaten, it would be by far the greatest achievement in the history of NFL football, to go 3 in a row and also go unbeaten. I think that's pretty much will be unmatched.
Oh, now I've clocked why you're desperate for the Chiefs to lose.
Oh yeah, no, I really want them to lose. I mean, I don't like the Bills more than any of the team. They've caused me the most heartache as a Dolphins fan. But I think for 1 week I'll be cheering on the Bills because we haven't got we haven't got many things going for us. We have the longest playoff drought in terms of wins. Haven't won a Super Bowl since 1973. Haven't made one since '84. And the only thing we have going for us really is the fact that we're the only team in history to go the whole season unbeaten. And I wish I was old enough to watch that Giants-Patriots game in 2007, because that would have been amazing to have seen that sort of end there. But for me, and every year they meet up, and the remaining members of that team, they'll meet up, have a glass of champagne, and I bet they were just getting their cars, getting a seatbelt on when the kick was blocked against the Broncos. But yeah, I don't see it lasting. I think they've been pretty stale. I mean, Kelsey's been doing pretty well. He's getting 80, 90 yards most games. There was a really crucial play on third down Mahomes made in that Broncos game where he shrugged off a tackle and found Kelsey on 3rd and 13 and got that first down, and it ended in a field goal, which ultimately in the end won in the game. So for me, they're finding ways to win when they're not playing that well, but I do think that they can't keep it going for 17, 18 weeks. They almost lost to the Buccaneers in overtime almost lost to the Broncos. I don't see it lasting. I think they'll lose at some point. And I think that it comes either against the Bills or against your Steelers in a few weeks. For me, I think Bills win this, and I think it'll be the end of the Chiefs' long unbeaten streak, which I think the last game they lost was Christmas Day, which is an amazing stat, really. Moving on to
controversial opinion, I think they'll lose to the Panthers next week.
Really?
I think it'll be a shock loss that breaks it. I think they'll beat the Bills, and I think they've got the Texans just before Christmas, and then they've got us on Christmas Day, which is definitely at the minute it looks a 50-50 game, but in 6 weeks' time it might not. But yeah, I think the Panthers are just starting to get a bit better in the last couple of weeks, and they might be. I've laughed at them all season, but they seem to be playing okay. And the Chiefs, I think, they're the sort of team that will rise against the Bills and give them a game, and then because they're 9-0, and I think they might overlook the Panthers a bit and then fall a bit short. That's just another wild prediction tonight. I've made quite a few of those, but there's another one.
Now, I want to believe that, but I've seen the Panthers beat the Saints and the Giants. I think I need to see them beat a good team first before I can truly wax lyrical about Bryce Young and the Panthers. I think right now they've won 2 games against 2 really bad teams, so I'm not going to get too carried away. Sunday Night Football, which I'm guessing is your game of the week, Freddie, as the Chargers host the Bengals, cause huge implications for myself as a Dolphins fan and just the playoffs altogether. Freddie, who wins this game for you?
Yeah, I think for me, this is my game of the week. I mean, the reason why I have Bills Chiefs third is because the Bills are easily top of the AFC East. The Chiefs are easily at top of the AFC West. At least with the AFC North battle, that really is fighting for the division. And this game, I mean, the playoff stakes are huge. The Bengals are 4-6. The Chargers are 6-3. They're looking pretty good. I think they'll be in the playoffs. But if they want to prove they're a real threat to the other 4 or 5 teams in the AFC, they've got to come in here and beat the Bengals. I think it's going to be a really good game. The Bengals defense is rubbish, so you'd expect Justin Herbert and co to have a bit of a field day. But then you've got Joe Burrow on the other end who's going to be scoring big points as well. I think it's going to be a really, really entertaining game. This one was flexed into Sunday Night Football a couple of weeks ago, so clearly the schedulers think the same. This is a bit of a coin flip. I think the Bengals have to win this game, and much like the Dolphins in LA last week, I've just got a feeling that the Bengals are going to go into the Chargers and win. From my perspective as a Steelers fan, I don't really know who I want to win this. I think it's more dependent on what happens in our game as to who I want. If we lose to the Ravens, it's likely we're probably going to end up being a wild card team. So do we want the Chargers further away, or do we want the Bengals completely out of contention? We've still got to play the Bengals twice, so I don't really know. But yeah, I think the Bengals go in and win but I think this will be something like a 35-33 sort of game.
Interesting. And it was originally going to be I believe it was the Colts against the Jets. That was the original Sunday Night Football game, but now it's been moved for obvious reasons to a much better game. We got another one. We're going for a different prediction winner. I'm going for the Chargers to win this. I love what the Chargers are doing. I think the defense has been really good. Look at the defense stats overall. I mean, they've got the least points allowed this season, only 118 points, 13.1 points per game. When it comes to the passing game, they've been top 10 team, I think about 6th or 7th. And then when it comes to the running game, they're in the top 10 as well. And then it comes to the offense as well. You look at their, J.K. Dobbins has been one of the best running backs this season. He's been brilliant. 6 touchdowns, almost 700 yards. And then there's only really 100, 200 yards between their top receiver this year and their third top receiver when it comes to yards. I mean, Ladd McConkey leads the way, 492, 4 touchdowns. Then third place is Quentin Johnson, 306 yards, 5 touchdowns. So I think they spread the ball out really well. Quentin Johnson's had a bit of a renaissance. Last year, he was seen as one of the biggest draft busts I've ever seen. But this year, he's really redeemed himself with some good coaching. And I think this team is going to, for me, if I'm honest, I think it's a lock to make the playoffs. I think they're a lock to be the 6th seed or the 7th seed. I don't see any way they don't make the playoffs with how that team is on both ends of the ball. I think they'll make the playoffs, and I think they'll win this game against Bengals. For a reason we've talked about a lot in this episode today is a bad Bengals defense. I think it's really bad, and I really want Burrow to win the game. I've turned full 80 from not liking him to really like him, wanting him to do well. And for me, I really want to see him do well, but I just don't see this Chargers team losing to the Bengals with that bad a defense. So give me the Chargers to win this game. I think that is my prediction there. But then finally, Monday Night Football, the Battle of Texas, as the Dallas Cowboys host the Houston Texans. I think it's pretty easy. Texans win. The Cowboys suck. That's literally it.
Well, I mean, to be honest, the Cowboys are terrible. I watched the game. There was no good games in the Sunday mid-period, so I ended up watching it's probably the worst 3-game stretch of games I can remember, but I ended up watching this game between the Cowboys and Eagles and just laughing at just how bad it was. They really were awful. And then obviously CD Lamb getting struck by getting blinded in his own stadium, which was quite impressive. But yeah, the Cowboys are just a truly terrible team. But then I look at the Texans and think, actually, they've not been very good the last few weeks. They had a narrow loss in Green Bay, and then they just about scraped past the Colts, and then they lost to the Jets on Thursday Night Football, and then Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions and still beat them. So, I mean, I'm not overly sold on what the Texans are doing at the moment. Nico Collins is probably going to play this week because obviously he was a late withdrawal at the end of last week. I think that'll be a big boost for them. And CJ Stroud needs a bit of a pick up and a go again because the Texans have gone a little bit flat. I think this is the game to get them going. I think the Cowboys will try and at least put in a bit of a fight on Monday Night Football, but this team, the defense is not what it was a year or two ago that could keep the game interesting. And that offense, man, is just, what are they doing? I mean, what are they doing? They've got Zeke back, who I think I could run with a bit more passion than he can at the minute. He just looks completely and utterly washed. I quite like Rico Dowdle, but they're not using him properly. Mike McCarthy is a dead man walking. His contract's up at the end of the season. There's absolutely no chance that's being renewed. He's a goner. I mean, I could sit here and talk about the Cowboys for hours about their problems, but they all start with Jerry Jones. But yeah, the Texans are going to come into Dallas. They'll beat them, but I don't think this will be the beatdown that some people are expecting.
I mean, Dak Prescott is now out for the season. It'll be Cooper Rush or maybe Trey Lance for the rest of the season. And I have to say, I lost a league in fantasy by 20 points, and CD Lamb was in my team. And I think if he caught that pass, it could have been a whole lot different, I think, in that league. But it's all going wrong. They're 3-6 right now. I know I've said the Dolphins can make the playoffs with a 3-6 record, but there's no way the Cowboys may make the playoffs. I think that their schedule's pretty tough, and I think the team with your quarterback now down, a backup quarterback who isn't terrible but isn't by any great shakes either. For me, I think the Cowboys are in free fall. I think the Houston Texans should have won the last 2 games. I think they cost the game themselves. They should have beaten the Jets. They missed a few field goals, and then the 19 unanswered points in the second half against the Lions really shot themselves in the foot. So I think they'll be eager to make up for their mistakes. And I can see them getting a get-right game here against the Cowboys. But that is it. Our predictions are done. We in total have 8 different games where we've gone for different winners. A big contrast to last week where we had just one different winner. So we've both gone for wins for the Lions, the Dolphins, the Colts, the Vikings, as well as the Niners and the Texans. Whereas in the other ones, I've gone for wins for the Commanders, Packers, Rams, Browns, Ravens, the Broncos, as well as the Bills and Chargers, whereas Freddie has gone for wins for the Eagles, Bears, Patriots, Saints, Steelers, Falcons, Chiefs, and Bengals. But that is where we end the podcast for today. So once again, huge thanks for Freddie for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And I think the reason why we've got so many different is because this is such a good schedule of games. I mean, you've got all the top teams playing each other. You've got arguably the 4 best teams in the AFC playing each other, which means that you've got a load of bad teams playing each other as well. So, yeah, really, really good slate of games. And I don't think there's any in there where either of us have gone for like a rank outsider to win. We've just purely gone for coin flip games and gone a different way. It's
going to be a great week. I'm so looking forward to watching it on Red Zone now. Whether I watch it, So I don't know whether I'll be watching Dolphins game on one screen, Red Zone on the other, but I don't know what I'm going to do about 9 o'clock about the Chiefs-Bills game, whether I just watch that and have the other two games on Red Zone. I'm not too sure, but it should be a cracker either way. But this has been your Across the Pod NFL podcast, Week 11 preview with, as ever, your host, myself, Andy Davis, and our guest today, Steelers fan, Freddy Harper-Davis. And we'll see you guys for our next episode.